Okay, I'm with a really amazing lady today, and I'm excited to talk with her. This is Dr. Foojan Zeine. Dr. Zeine is a clinical psychologist and a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's an expert in many different areas. Two that jump out are in relationships, but also on this online therapy, which a lot of us are during this COVID thing are finding we may go kicking and screaming, but we're having to go anyway. So she's somebody that if you're interested in getting some coaching on that, definitely seek her out. She's also the host of the Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat on KMET 1490 AM, which is also heard on the internet if you're not local to where she is in Southern California. She's the author of several books, including Life Reset, Wisdom of Relaxation, and she's frequently involved in public appearances, media. She's appeared on everything from Voice of America to Dr. Phil, and she's foolhardy enough to talk to me for a few minutes. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for getting this going, and I get an opportunity to see you again. It was a pleasure to meet you at the Ericksonian conference, and it was also a pleasure to have you on my show. So for everyone who's watching this, you could definitely go to watch the show. I'm sure it's probably on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they can watch that. So yeah, thank you. It's
Oh,
good.
sure.
I'm sure we're gonna have a great conversation together.
Yeah. So what I'd like to just kind of start with is um, this. I watched you present and talk a little bit about this model that you have developed through a lot of trial, errors, blood, sweat, and tears. And this, you refer to it as the awareness integration model. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about, how it came to be, and in a short time period. I know it's hard, but just the main ideas that have kind of driven that.
Of course. I've been a therapist for about 30 years. So my
You
school,
started when you were 3.
thank you. My school was humanistic existential. So I kind of came up with, I was taught that type of a philosophy where my outlook was from there. But obviously, I got trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, in emotive EFT, and then behavioral, a lot more like solution focused therapy, which kind of looked at solutions and the behavioral shift. And I also have done hypnosis for almost 20 years. And I learned EMDR for trauma-based clients because I was working a lot with veterans. I was working with domestic violence and childhood trauma. So I learned from transactional analysis. I saw Dr. Albert Ellis, who actually forwarded my first book about online therapy.
Mhm.
So I was like you, was just learning and enjoying all of this learning and bringing the best of what it was into our room and practicing it and see what works and what doesn't. So it felt like I picked the best that it was from each one of these theories and interventions and kind of tested them in. And then there was one thing that kept missing for me, and that was how come we go to the past, we look at the traumas, we go through the memories. Our clients go through a lot of catharsis, they go through the pain, but this beliefs don't get dismantled. Like the best we could ever do, or I could ever do as a therapist, was for the belief system to show up, and then they would learn how quickly to release themselves from the belief system, and then do the coping mechanism that they had learned to be a healthy coping mechanism. But still, when the triggers were coming and they were falling into the triggers and they would go through some of the pain until finally at one point, or they're like, oh, I'm being triggered, let me shift, which is a lot of what we do also in the cognitive behavioral shifting. And even hypnosis wasn't shifting the belief system. It was shifting many other things, but not that. So that was like the question mark that was there for me. Um, so then the model got created by the best of what I've had seen, and then trying to open this puzzle up. And as I was working with people, I looked at how we relate to the world. And I think there's 3 ways that we relate to the world. 3 days that we actually live or exist. And there's no other way except being in one of these concepts. And we live always in relationships, like Even if you leave someone behind in a vacuum or in a room with nothing, they start a relationship, conversation, either with themselves or something in the room or even the walls. And then we call them psychotic because they start creating all these types of relationships in their head, which they don't exist. So you get that we have to be in relationships. So it's one part of it is how we relate to the world. Another part is how we have an assumption and we live on an assumption about how the world lives to us, like how they think, feel and behave toward us. And then we're always having a relationship with ourselves wherever we go. So then these three parts of relatedness, then I started looking at how does our system run? Well, we have thought process, and side by side we have emotional process. And this thought and emotion immediately shows up at some sort of a behavior. Even if we don't talk or do anything, it shows up as the body language that is, expressing itself, or we actually express through words or actions. And so there's two internal part of thought and feeling, and then the external part that it shows up as in behavior, and then it has an impact in the world and on the relationships, whatever's out here. And I thought, if we become conscious and observe in these areas, so in the way that I think, feel, behave, and the impact that I have toward the world, in the way that I assume the world thinks, behaves, and thinks, it feels and behaves toward me, and the impact that that has, and the impact of my assumptions. Obviously, all day I'm living with my own assumptions. And then how do I think and feel and behave toward myself, because I'm the one who's going toward and doing this narrative concept constantly, and the impact of my own narration about myself as I bring this self to the world and relates to the world. So if I kind of like install a camera here with no commentary, just the camera with data collection, and as I watch this, then I could keep looking at the impact and the results that I'm creating. And if I like the result, then I notice the thought process, the emotional process, the behaviors that I do that are moving me forward and creating all that I need to create, which is based on what I want and my goal is. And if by any chance these results are not that, then which part of these things it's not working, is responsible for this result that I created or co-created with the world? Which part of this I can shift the dance with? Is it the way I think about the world, or these belief systems, or maybe I should shift my assumptions about the world, or maybe the way I am about myself needs to change? So it gives me a little bit of more of a driver's seat position versus the passenger seat, which is like automatically I've gotten these things, created all these schemas and storylines and beliefs and formulas, and I'm just kind of like moving along and then thinking it's all everybody else's fault? Or can I get into the driver's seat with these types of observation? And then through the observation, we can see like the negative core beliefs that I might have about myself or others in the area of, well, what do you think about yourself? I can see if they're consistently showing up with some negative core belief that it's about, I'm bad, I'm less than, which is, showing up in every single relationship. Then we take this concept, which is a combination of a little bit of a EMDR, hypnosis, and transactional analysis concept of inner child in the inner child workshop. And then we go in. And what I noticed, the key to those were to look at, which I got that really from the EMDR processing, but without actually doing the eye or the tapping, but to look at what is the thought that shows up, the emotion that shows up, where is it in the body? And then we do obviously the intensity measurement. And then I asked, this is the added piece that I added to it, which is allow your body with those emotions, allow the part of your body, the muscles, the cells, and all of that, to allow your body with that emotion to guide you toward the memory lane and the beginning or the first memory that you actually created this thought process, like you invented this belief. So there's a couple of pieces to it, because usually before it was more like, well, what do you remember? So the person would only go through the memory lane that they had installed for themselves. You know how like we have pictures and you go to your home and you've picked pictures of your life and put it there, and it as if those are representative of your life. We do that also with trauma. Like we take pictures of special incidents and thought processes, and then every time you say something, you're like, well, it must have been that. And I really experienced that to myself. Is like, I would go through abandonment issue. And then in therapy, it's like, well, must have been because my parents got divorced. So we create these must have
Right.
concepts instead of the actual time that there was a trauma and that the child in that moment made up something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one aspect of it. The other one is when I'm responsible about it, that I made it up. I really made it up. Like, you know, I was molested from age 3 to 10. And I remember when I went to therapy, there was a lot more like, okay, I became a victim because, oh, somebody did this something to me. And then through these processes of AI, even when, because what I was doing, I was teaching my therapist, and my therapists were doing it with me. So I was also going through the process. And it was interesting where I got up that although these events happened, but I made up really interesting stuff out of those events.
Right.
And I kept my inventions of that. So the responsibility of who I am and how I invented, being accountable for that allowed me the power to also say, I could change that narrative immediately because it wasn't like a narrative that was set. It was not even true. I just made this up based on whatever it is. I can make up anything I want right now. And obviously, research shows that every time we go back into the memory, we create a new memory out of it. So it's not any more longer that we're going to go through the memory now looking at my child as a victim, but now I'm looking at the memory as a powerful little girl who at that moment created this storyline. And because she was creative, because she was resilient, because she was powerful, because she needed all of that. So going back to that memory and looking at that, and then coming from, this is part of the, you know, the adult child relationships, also that we can bring the person who is me here at this age, like me as a 58-year-old, now going to that 3-year-old and saying, and like going through the process of catharsis and all of that, caring, healing, but also having this conversation of, I'm you and I'm coming from your future. And guess what? We survived it all. Yeah. We've learned this skill. We're never going to do that again. We're never going to allow that. So it's more, and then like, you don't need to stay there. Like, you are part of me. And I thank you for hanging in there. I thank you because you were powerful, and thank you for being here, and we got this. So this thing gets integrated, reintegrate within your system. So we're not all walking around with a lot of little children now that we all have for the rest of our life taking care of these emotional states. The emotional states actually gets integrated within us. And then then I saw, Paul, that, you know, we have different domains of life that we're constantly living in. Right. So if I was not good enough or powerless against the world at age 3, well, at age 5 or 6, I went to school. So I took myself with this belief that I'm not good enough or I'm powerless to school. So with that glasses, I made up a lot more stuff in that. And then I went to high school. And then with my peers, I made up a lot more within the same path of belief system. So you could see the fabric of this belief system now is all over the domains of my life. Right. So because of that, it was more like, okay, now that we could do this, can we do this in every domain of life? So we could clear up, not only to be aware of all the belief systems and schemas and, you know, thought process and movie scenarios we've created on every aspect of life, but also like all the core beliefs that have impacted these acts of life. So then we said, okay, can we take these 4 phases, which is awareness about how I am with you, awareness of my presumptions of you to me, and awareness of how I am to myself, and then the awareness of whatever it was caught as a belief system in the past, which I'm going to clear up. Take these 4 phases and take him through all of these domains, such as my relationship with humanity, people at large that I don't know, but you know, we drive together, we work together, we do a lot of stuff together. You know, we're in Starbucks together. You know, we're wearing masks together with the COVID now. Like, you know, they're responsible for creating light for me, food for me. I mean, there's a lot of human beings on the face of the earth that I deal with, but I don't know. Acquaintances, extended family members, friends, and then going into work and coworkers or employees and employers. Going to my siblings, my relationship, intimate relationship, the people that I've been with, my marriage, my children, my father, my mother, my siblings, my, the relationship between them, my body, myself, sexuality, money, um, nature, universe, death, God, relationship with every aspect of my life that I've created and people in my life, and go through these 4 phases with them. So they're kind of like you're doing a sweeping and cleaning up. Not only you become aware, the camera is installed, but you clean up whatever it is, and then you look at your own dualities consistently about the choices you make and the results you've created. And then we go to phase 5, which is now let's look at all of these relationships with an intentionality that what type of a thought process, now that I know what is conditional has been there, like automatic, out of all the automatic ones, which one do I really want and choose for the rest of my life that I can concentrate on and really put those forward? Not that the automatic thoughts won't show up, but which one am I going to now spend time and energy and commitment toward? What kind of emotions that I'm choosing to actually take part with and feel and allow to be? Not that the other emotions won't show up, but I'll clean them up. And then what type of other emotions do I enjoy staying in? What type of behaviors I get that don't work for me, and then I'm going to choose these type of behaviors and skills. What type of goals do I want? What kind of intentionality, value systems I want to live? And then as I sort those out based on all the knowledge that I found myself, then I can systematize those and put them in every relationship. Like in a relationship with my mother, I choose to think of myself this way, her this way. These are the emotions that I'm going to produce and create, foster. These are the behaviors that I'm going to promise and commit to do with my relationship with her in order to create such and such a result with her. And then we can go through every single relationship and create that for ourselves. So you really you're creating an intentional way of being. And again, not that, I'm not claiming like, we're rebooting yourself through like a computer and the old programming just wipes. No, it's just that when you're aware of the old programming, first of all, we've taken a lot of the intensity out because of the phase 4 that we've done cleaning up. But also when it shows up, you're so clear in what that is, and it's so different than what you stated you wanted to do, and you committed to, this is who I want to be, that you keep shifting to what you intend to be. So then you kind of like create those and commit yourself to a new way of being, however intentional. And you can always change that, based on trial and error. You get to do new intentions any day you want if you see it doesn't work for you. And then the 6th phase is to create systems out there that constantly reminds you. Some people do journaling, some people do collaging, some people have structures with other people who remind them of the structure that they want. So, so that not only we have that commitment in our head and kind of like inside, but also do an external piece that is constantly calling us forward and calling us to that commitment that we said we're going to do. And that's the 6th phase of awareness integration model.
Wow. As you were going through each of those, what jumped out to me, and maybe you could elaborate on this just a little bit. We are kind of transforming a part of our identity, not the core of who we are. We're maybe finding that who we really are. How do you deal sometimes with a client who they have built so much of their identity around this old stuff or their pathology or whatever, and now they're entering here, they're getting into phase 2 here, and they might, I don't know, it's like it's so unknown maybe to them. How do you kind of talk them through to accept, yeah, this, happiness, if you've never had it, or at least they don't, this new finding out who you really are. But I'm so used to this old identity, even though as dysfunctional as it could be, that seems safer. So how do you kind of facilitate that movement through stage 2 on for some people?
My work has always been very client-centered. So although it appears that it's very structured, the structure is not rigid and it's always client-centered. So what I've done with those clients is work through it so they get it that they're choosing to stay here due to familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're choosing it, then might as well enjoy and honor their choice, knowing that there are other choices whenever they choose to shift. So I've had clients who say, but I've always been depressed. And then so we go back to these phase 5 and look at the childhood and what's going on. Is it that they're depressed because of chemical issues, which obviously then they need to get other type of medication management. If they are saying that, oh, this was mine because of these issues, so it's like clearing with your mother, with your father, clearing those aspects so that you could let go. And making sure to know that you were responsible and however you set it up. So how you can change, how you can shift the way you were looking at your mother, yourself, your father, and everyone, so you can shift those. Sometimes I've known people who say this wasn't even their depression, it was their mother's. My parents got divorced when I was 5, and my mother was depressed for many, many years. And I have some of these, work that I did on myself. I remember I looking at is just, my God, I was sitting in my mother's depression and I just felt for her so much. And I used to hug her and almost experience every feeling that she had. And that was in me. And not recognizing that, then I had to release it. It's like, okay, you can have your own depression. I don't need to own it.
Right.
So it's like finding where that piece is, which they're holding on to with the familiarity. And I think when they choose that, it's like, I choose this because it's familiar. And I'm like, okay, then choose it and enjoy it. Don't feel like you're a victim of the depression anymore. Choose the depression. And if you like to choose this much happiness in like 8 hours of depression, and you choose, okay, I'm tired of depression, can I have 2 minutes of happiness? Then choose happiness for 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's that, I think it's the power to accept yourself and not constantly resist these pieces, which gives them the power of that agency that I'm the driver. And if I choose to be an addict for the rest of my life, I am. I have one client who I've worked with for almost close to 10 years. She started in a rehab with me. And it was interesting because we were talking today. She's an author. She is doing amazing work with editing other people's book. Her business is high. She is, she's having an amazing relationship with her son. She's got a great relationship, intimate relationship. Everything is fantastic. Her use of opiate is the highest that it's ever been in her life, which was worse. It's worse than the time that I met her.
Mm-hmm.
Her use of drug is worse than when I met her. But she was completely non-functional then, and she's completely functional, a member of the society today.
Right.
And we were talking about this, and it was like, at one point, you really got to choose. Are you going to choose drugs and do like maintenance for the rest of your life while your productivity is moving every day in a higher place, or you're going to go into abstinence? And she's looking at me like, I've never heard anybody to tell me that I can choose this. I said, yes, a lot of people say, and it's not up to me whether you choose it or not. I'm just mirroring to you that your life looks like you've really worked on yourself. Like, look at the productivity, look at everything that you have in your life, and yet you're not letting this one go. And you're constantly in a fight with it. So now stop fighting with this. Either choose to be an addict, but a functional one, or if you think you can't be a functional one, then let's go through, a year of really hardship of the sobriety because you've gone through all these other hardship. So Paul, I think is that element of I'm in power a bit that takes a lot of these edges out.
And I think you're kind of person-centered, and I'll even say Ericksonian work of not fighting against the system, not fighting against the symptom, but because anytime you set up that barrier of this part of you is not acceptable, it's some weird thing that people will cling to it more and then feel out of control by as our mutual colleague Steve Gilligan says, by welcoming it in, but realizing that we are welcoming it in and we have a choice. It's like it takes the power away from the feeling as out of control, I guess, that they would have if you had taken the tactic of, look, oh my God, you've got to deal with this. This is going to ruin your life. Let me lecture to you. Let me become your parent. And, that's unfortunately we sometimes catch ourselves doing in therapy. So I find that there's a lot of wisdom in many ways. I get to what you just said about, saying you have a choice, welcome it in, and where do you want to go with it, as opposed to, okay, it's got to stop immediately.
Yes, because there's a lot of dysfunction that we go through. So we observe all of it, we look at it. Again, when I say to clients, I want to install the camera with no commentary. I just
Mhm.
want you to look at what you're doing, and if it matches the result you intended to have. And in that way, there is no commentary about it. It's a factual, reality-based concept.
Mhm.
You look at reality out there, not a fantasy of what is, but the reality of what is. And if you don't know what the reality is, ask. People will tell you.
Mhm.
At least the agreed upon reality, they'll tell you, like, this
Right.
is what's going on with me, or this is what's going on with you, or this is what I see in you. And we've talked about, like, what is your relationship with money? And people come up with all the elaborate stuff. And I said, well, what would other people say about your relationship with money? Like, what will your wife say, what parents say? And they're like, yeah, I don't understand. They say this, this, this. I said, well, obviously the reality that you have in your own head is very different than how you portray with the world. So don't you think these realities kind of got to get aligned with each other, or it's
Mhm.
very far off?
Mhm.
So which reality do you choose to have? And then it's more of just, again, there's no shame based, there's no morality based conversation. It's more like, can you become a responsible and an accountable human being to yourself first?
Right.
And if you can be responsible and accountable to you, trust me, you'll be responsible and accountable to the rest of the world,
Right.
and powerful internally in that way.
Mhm. When you were saying that, I was thinking about the spiritual teacher Krishnamurti. So someone asked him about psychoanalysis, and where you go into you try to uh, unlock the mysteries of the unconscious mind. And he said that if more people would just pay attention to their daily results, they wouldn't have to spend so much time in psychoanalysis. What I think he meant was, we're not really honest with ourselves when the evidence is right in front of us. And sometimes we do have to turn to our spouse, partner, friend, whoever, and go, what do you see here? And then they can go, this, but we generally don't pay, and this is where the awareness part comes in, I guess, that paying attention to our results. And then, as you say, with that camera, which I love that metaphor you use of the camera, because to be a camera person, you have to observe the action, but you're never the actor. So it's like they're responsible, but at the same time, they're not so enmeshed in it that it's like gives them a little positive disassociation, if you will.
Very much,
Mm.
very much. And this is something we do, for example, in meditation, that you become the observer, and
Right,
then you become the observer of the observer.
right.
And I think that it's like, why should we wait until we're 30 years old to mess up and then look back and say, okay, what did I do? Versus we're also trying to bring this into not only so like taking the awareness integration from a theory and a philosophical perspective, bringing it into the therapeutic model, and apply it in a particular way, and then taking it now also into educational model, which um, I have one daycare that started to work in this model, and it's already the 5th year, and we're finding amazing results. And we're writing the book on an educational model, and how do you take this philosophy and now apply it so that you could install these cameras from infancy, almost infancy. It's amazing how a child, which was about 2 to 3 year old, learns how to emotionally regulate themselves. One of the funniest story was this teacher who's going through, doing the awareness integration model. When the little kids are having their upset, it's a more like a proactive, not a reactive model, but a proactive model. It's like, let's sit down, what's going on. And then, well, obviously the child doesn't know what the feeling's name is. So they go through naming the feeling and where is it in their body. And now take a deep breath and release it. And where do you want to go? Now, what is your intention? What is it you want to do? Now, like, I want to play with this person who beat me or whatever. Okay. And what were you, how come what do you think of him? He's bad. Well, he's done something bad to you, but like, is he really bad? No, he's done something bad. So, you're kind of like doing the whole model with them in a sense. And what would you like to do? I want to play.
Hmm.
So, would you like to play with a good guy or a bad guy? Good guy. Okay. So do you think he's a good guy that you want to go play? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, so they'll do that. So then she was telling me that this little guy at age like 4 had to go to a dentist, and he goes to dentist, and he's practicing this in a dentist office. Okay, okay, okay. It's pain, but I'm afraid it's right here. And then he's practicing this whole thing. And then at one point with his mother, it's like, Mommy, you're upset. Yeah, you're upset. Where is upset? Here. Okay, close your eyes, go there. And it was amazing how this little little guy is utilizing emotional release and regulation at such a young age. And if we learn how to do that and like be responsible about how we're thinking at that age, can you imagine? Like, we don't store all of these traumas and stuff that we do, throughout our life. So that's that. We're using it in an educational model, hopefully taking it to whole, the school systems and parenting, like teaching parents how to do that with their children. We're using it in a psychological model, and then also self-help, because we did a research in Cal State Long Beach with 4 classes, 126 young adults, and only my book. Like, the book was going in chapters. They were the 2 professors were giving the chapters to them, and then they would go home and work on journaling and doing their own work. They came back and gave it to the teacher and went back again to the next chapter. 13 weeks that they went through all of the chapters. And we did obviously pre-test and post-test. And we got self-help, no therapy, 64% minimization of depression, and that population has the highest level of depression and suicide, and about 45% minimizing anxiety. And then the self-efficacy and self-confidence had raised, self-esteem had raised. So it was like, even without a therapist, I think I've written it in a way, and it's been modeled in a way that somebody can be independent of their therapist and coach. But obviously for deep work, they need to come for those 5 phase 4s. They need to actually come to the therapy. In therapy models, when we've done it in the agencies, we found 75% minimization of depression and 65% minimization of anxiety. So it's really, we're trying to create more research in different universities with different population, so we can really see the effects of it. And but it's definitely a model that people can use on themselves and really learn. Although, as we know as therapists, there are times that no matter for us how much we know, we still need to sit in front of someone that they can be mirrored, that they can hold the space of beauty for us and all of that. So it doesn't minimize what a therapist can do. Right. I think it just enhances it faster.
Yeah. So if somebody's interested in hearing this and they say, wow, and they really want to start training in this model, how long generally, and then we're talking about strictly for psychotherapy applications, how long does it take someone to really kind of grasp the essence of this if they are, somebody who's very open to it?
I've done a lot of the trainings with a 2-day workshop, which I explain a lot of the different aspects of it. And then we go into role modeling and role playing together, where we could really look at the deep. One of the places that a lot of therapists kind of find struggling is when they're doing the deep work with them, and where is it that a client might get stuck, and how to unstuck the process of the client, and how to go, because sometimes we loop from one memory to another, and how to do all of those loops, which gets a little bit more complex. But 2-day workshops I've done beautifully, and then what we've done is after that we've done consultation, where the therapist goes and tries out different things, and then they come back and consult and kind of like bring it into their own. Right. It's also a model where each therapist can really bring themselves. And I say this because I love Virginia Satir,
Yeah.
but
Thank
nobody
you.
can be Virginia Satir.
No.
Only Virginia Satir could produce what she produced.
Mhm.
And I remember when I was working through this model, and I had a clinic with almost 60 therapists that we were working through this and really like getting all of the details. And one of our conversation, we kept saying like, Foojan, I don't know how you do that. I can't do that. And I'm like, okay, this is not working
Right.
if the only person who can do this is me. So it was really trying to refine it, so make it simplify so that people can really bring themselves. Like, no, I didn't need to be Virginia Satir. Nobody needs to do it my way.
Mhm.
But to have the tools to bring who they are. Each therapist has their unique beauty in how they bring themselves into this. So it gives them a structure, which they can follow the structure, but bring who they are in it.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of where the consultation works, where the first 2 days they learn and then they consult so that I can give them the tool, but they can make it into their own. The same way I made cognitive behavioral or, all of the stuff that I had learned into who I was, and I brought it into the session.
Yeah. So where's the best place for people to get in touch with you? I would say probably your website. So could you give us that kind of information?
Sure. Foojan.com, Foojan.com. The book Life Reset, the awareness integration path to the life you want, which is written actually for the public, but it's exercise level, so you could just get it. And I suggest even for therapists to get that so that you can work with yourself.
Mhm.
Plus that you give this to your client makes it easier for them to go do some of the work in the week, and then you can deepen it inside the session. So getting the book really helps on Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, or anywhere. And right now, I finished actually the book that trains the therapist in and goes through a lot of the deeper layers that we do also in the seminars. The editors have it, so hopefully,
Yeah.
you'll be back by the end of probably in a couple of weeks, so that I can give it to the publisher. So that one will be out definitely by next week, by 2021, next year. But besides that, go to Foojan.com. There's a lot of videos also about explaining it. There's 2 videos that are also on Foojan.com or my YouTube channel that I did with Naked Podcast, which she's so amazing. She said, do the model for me and we're going to do it on YouTube. So we did one on the area of money and her business, and we did one on the area of sex. So those 2 are also on the, if somebody really wants to see me do on one area how we do it until the end, those 2 are as a role modeling out there too.
Some great. Well, I think you are doing some really amazing work, and I want to honor all that you're doing. And I think you're helping a lot of people, and you're helping a lot of therapists too by giving them a different way to think about how they do their work. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy. And guys, she is very busy. I'm talking very busy to talk to me today. It's meant a lot to me, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It was a joy seeing you. Thank you for the opportunity so that, we could be with everyone. And I'd love to have you back also on the show.
Oh, thank you. Great.